Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for making time for our September 15th BLF launch event. Every year, we take time out to stretch our arms wide and reach into the community to make people aware of the work we're doing here and open up an application process for businesses to take advantage of the fund that we've established for them. For the agenda today, we're going to go through introductions. We're going to reintroduce ourselves to you guys as Co-op Sensi. Ella and I will introduce ourselves, and then we'll talk about the why. Why have we developed the fund for the work that we're seeking to accomplish here in the region? We'll talk about the worker ownership solution. We are fortunate today to have one of the great leaders within our network to kind of give us perspective of what being a part of the network has been today, and then we'll talk next steps. We do have time set aside for Q&A. However, what I would share is if there are questions that pop up during the presentation, please feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat. I like interactive engagement, so if appropriate, I will pause in the transition to take those questions, but I just want to let you know you do not have to feel imprisoned to keep any comment or question to the end if you really want to share it. Next slide. So who are we? We as Co-op Sensi are a local business incubator focused on growing worker ownership in our region through employee ownership. We do that through two primary models, developing worker cooperatives, but also establishing democratic ESOPs or employee stock ownership plans. We've been in the game doing this work since 2012 and currently have up to 14 co-ops in our existing network. Next slide. I will go ahead and introduce myself and allow for this wonderful beauty to introduce herself. I am Christopher Bennett. I'm the Business Legacy Acquisition Fund Manager. I came on the team, a very excellent team, back in 2021 with the specific focus of accelerating our growth and efforts in acquiring larger and more established businesses. Ellen?
Yes, and I'm Ellen Vera, one of the co-founders of Co-op Sensi. I have the honor to do this work with Chris, alongside Chris. And yeah, we are just excited and passionate about broadening ownership in our community. And we're excited to share with you guys the success we've had in this kind of first year of our kind of proactive acquisition program. So thank you guys all for being here today.
You can go ahead and transition to the next slide, Ellen. One thing I must say here is that this would not have been possible with two other individuals. We have an excellent team that works, but I do want to give a shout out to Clancy and Beth for their work specifically and getting us prepped for today, but also getting us established and ready to go in the fund. So as we mentioned before, what is the why? Why are we establishing a fund to specifically accelerate worker ownership in our region? We partnered with the OWN network, the Ohio Worker Network, to basically proctor a study to take a look at what does it look like, not only in our region, but in our country, with the existing circumstance with business owners who are looking at retiring, so a part of the baby boomer generation, who have phenomenal workers, but not sure what the transition may look like for them. And then thirdly, are looking for an exit and are somewhat interested in understanding how they can leave a piece of what has been worked on up to that point with the workers. One of the other pieces of what we saw in the study was also this spike in inequality in terms of wealth. We fundamentally see ownership, and for us, business ownership being a significant driver of wealth building from a framework perspective, but also uniquely in our region. And so we saw this as an opportunity to develop a solution for these issues. Next slide. To give greater perspective on just the order of magnitude, over 50% of baby boomer businesses are retiring within the next decade. That is accelerating. And I think one of the things that is a real strong call to action for us was the 80% of those businesses with a lack of succession plan. What that means is there may have been a thought that maybe son or daughter would take over. There may have been a thought that maybe someone would just buy me. There is not a clear, defined, well-articulated plan for many of these businesses to think through or execute what it looks like to transition their business from their hands to someone else. Right? To give you some scope of what it looks like nationally, more than 2 million businesses stand in this particular precarious position, and these businesses impact up to 25 million plus workers. As we drill down into what it looks like for the state of Ohio, 54% of our businesses fit this particular criteria, and for us, that looks like 94,000 firms. And what I would share with you guys is that we also, through the study, which can be shared, went even deeper. So not just looking at Ohio as a state, but also what does it look like for our region? So as we think about the southwest corner of the state, how does this look like for us? And so we took it as not just a problem to solve, but also an opportunity. And we feel that the worker solution is the proper solution to solving or providing a significant option for this particular scenario.
And I would just add, in Southwest Ohio, it shows about 15,000 businesses that are in the same kind of precarious position that Chris is explaining. So.
Herein lies the Business Legacy Fund. So the wonderful genius that existed in the organization came together and said, hey, we see this huge looming issue coming. How can we accelerate our efforts not only to get connected to more businesses, but larger businesses and large in terms of number of employees to touch more families and lives? And so the group went out and partnered with a number of fiscal sponsors, but one in particular that has been an excellent partner, C Commons. And we've really been focused on establishing relationships in the community to offer up our fund as an alternative for exiting owners in their business. So why employee ownership? One of the things that came back in the study is that one of the huge benefits of the model for the workers is better pay and better benefits. What we also seen in the data is that these businesses are far more productive and also more profitable. And our I guess, hypothesis as to why that is that once you have more people invested into the success of a business outside of I just want to get my check, you really start seeing transformational change. One of the models or frameworks we introduce into our co-ops is known as the Great Game of Business, where we walk through every person's role in increasing top line of the business and also in understanding how they can reduce or improve or be more efficient on the bottom line. The last thing I think is very significant, especially coming out of the shutdown from the pandemic and going into what is likely perceived by many as a recession, these businesses are very much so very resistant to downturns. And so we felt like this being a model with those qualities is something that's significant and can work. And so we feel that our option is significantly something that should be acknowledged and should be at the forefront of many business owners' minds. Next slide. We would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge many of all the partners that have helped us get to this particular point. We acknowledge that we're not a standalone in our community, and many of the partners here have had very instrumental input in helping us identify potential leaders that could serve as professional managers for businesses that we acquire, helping us make connections within the community to identify deal flow or companies that would fit our criteria or fit this particular model. But more importantly, helping with elevating the awareness around this as an option for many business owners who are currently thinking about what does next look like. Next slide. Before we transition into the 2021-22 BLF results, I'm not sure if there was anything in the chat. I did want to take a beat. There are no questions or comments in the chat. Ellen, is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. So yes, we want to share with you guys all the work that we've been doing the past 2 years since the fund has been open. So here's just a little bit of some of the stats, and then we're also going to share with you, well, you're going to get to meet one of our owners that has recently transitioned. So we've had over 150 conversations with individual owners. We've sent out over 250 personal letters and emails, kind of spreading the word about this model and the possibilities. We've actually done over 40 different in-depth succession planning sessions with local business owners, really talking to them about what their options are and helping them understand kind of what that worker ownership option could look like for them. And in our first year of 2021, we had 12 local businesses apply to the fund. So that was something that was very exciting to be able to really kind of kick this off with a bang. From, starting then now in 2022, getting to the next year of the fund, we had 15 local businesses that were really deeply considering selling to their workers, and 6 of those local businesses with almost 90 workers took concrete steps towards transitioning to worker ownership. So we're really starting to see a little bit of a groundswell starting to happen. 3 of these businesses entered into exclusive due diligence process with our fund, and of those 3, 2 have transitioned to date. So Shine Child Care Center, which was the picture on that first slide, an awesome child care center up in Mount Airy that does just really amazing nature-based child care and is filling a huge need in our community. And the owner of that business, she was ready. She had started this when her kids were really small, and they were both now, in middle school and getting into high school, and she was ready to kind of move on to the next phase of her life. And in order to not let that business, kind of that really important community resource go under, she said, what? Why don't I sell to the wonderful, amazing teachers here who have just really made this place what it is? So they, began the process with us in 2021, and just this past January, they transitioned to worker ownership. And currently have 4 of the women there are worker owners, and they're bringing on more this fall. So they've been doing an awesome job. And you guys are going to meet Brandon from Heritage Hill in just a second. They're a Black-owned apparel company. And you're going to hear a little bit more from him about kind of why they decided to do this and their experience. But before I do that, I just want to kind of, wrap this up of what the local impact has been of saving these jobs, of keeping these jobs in our community. And to date, between just these 2 companies, that's almost $14 million in sales and $2.2 million in payroll. So we're excited about that. So with no further ado, I'm going to stop sharing here, and we're going to take a little pause here to actually talk with Brandon about what his experience has been. So let me just, oops, that. Brandon, if you want to come off mute.
Yep. I think I'm live.
Okay. There we go. Awesome. So everyone, I just want to introduce Brandon Hoff, the amazing visionary founder of Heritage Hill. So Brandon, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your business?
I think that's the first time I've ever heard anyone say amazing visionary founder. I'm gonna have to add that to a bio, but thank you. I appreciate it. But yeah, everyone, I'm Brandon Hoff. I founded a company called the Heritage Hill in my godfather's basement at the time in Avondale, and we were really on a mission I got laid off from my job in 2019, and I had worked for a company where I really wasn't aligned with the mission and vision of this company. And I set on a goal to say, hey, I want to create a company that my ancestors will be proud of. So what's central and important to us is making our ancestors proud, and we kind of walk in that light, and we want to do business in that way. So we're a local based apparel manufacturing company. Right now we're servicing about 30 historically Black colleges and universities. We also do some work with some organizations within the NPHC, or Divine Nine Fraternity and Sororities. And we do a lot of Black empowerment, Black history, and we consider ourselves to be a good voice for the culture.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon. So as the owner of a small business, what got you interested in transitioning your business to worker ownership? Why did you decide to do this?
So I was really inspired when I read more about just business ownership and capitalistic practices and different economic structures. I started to really learn and understand more about Black Wall Street, which was a historically Black business district that existed in Oklahoma. And one of the things that was central to the way that they did business was through cooperative ownership and partnership, and being able to do it in the spirit of togetherness. So I did some research just on what that would look like, and that led me down the path of cooperative ownership and what that would look like for my own organization.
Awesome. And for those folks out here who maybe don't have as much experience with the fund, or maybe any owners that are out there might be considering this, can you maybe just describe a little bit your experience of kind of what it was like going through this process and working with the fund?
I did. So I had a really good experience. I think I did a Google search, or actually, no, you know what, guys, someone introduced me to the Business Legacy Fund. So a colleague of mine who I trust and admire said, hey, I think you should check this out. This looks like it just rolled out, and you should apply. So I applied. The application process was really easy. I went through some coursework that for Xavier, I believe that Xavier said, hey, you can get a certification through cooperative management or training. So the whole process, just in learning about the legalities and the benefits of cooperative ownership, was instrumental in just learning through that process. I didn't know much about like how a true co-op functioned and how it works. So being able to learn about, just how to structure the company, how should we situate bylaws, how should we structure our company, and then just working together, right? Being partners within an organization, because I came in as a single member founder and then was adding people to the organization as worker owners to say, how do we build out this infrastructure and ecosystem for at least our human resources? And so much so that I think Ellen, you were at least my point of contact for the most part throughout that. And then Ellen ended up becoming our co-op coach. So I've had a really good relationship. Ellen and I have been able to develop a really good partnership as well. So I got raving reviews.
Thank you, Brandon. Can you speak a little bit to some of the differences that you've seen in your business now that you guys have transitioned to a worker-owned model?
Sure. And I think that buy-in, so the people, at least a lot of the, let's say aspiring or worker owners who will become future owners in the company, just talking about what worker ownership is, people get really excited just to learn like, hey, I'll have an opportunity to have an ownership stake within this company. I think that's more meaningful, more valuable. I think more people are learning about ownership and wealth building practices and the importance of ownership within a company. So I believe personally that sweat equity is central to building a business, and the people who are working within the company should be rewarded for their service. And I'm learning that people share that sentiment. They just don't know how to go about it. They don't know what to do. So now introducing that, there's a new level of excitement within our organization. People are asking questions, they want to know more. And I think it definitely makes the idea of togetherness and building together stronger. So I think people are really, really excited for it.
Awesome. And last but not least, can you just so like I said, we might have some, potential owners here in the crowd today, or folks that are working with, owners who are thinking about either succession or wanting to broaden ownership within their organization. What advice would you have, or what would you tell them as they consider this option?
Yeah, I think that, and it's really good if you care, because maintaining the essence and like the heartbeat of the company. Most of the time, a founder, you start the company with a goal in mind, and you want to build a culture of the company, and you want that to maintain. At least I know that's pretty sacred for me, for our organization, to maintain the ethos of our why. And I don't know if there's a better way to do that than to transitioning to the existing people that are in the organization, to empower them and trust them and say, hey, I've been working, especially in smaller micro enterprises where you may have a good relationship with your workers, you may know them personally, to say, hey, I've been working with you guys, and I've got buy-in, you trusted in the vision, and now I want to give that back to you. You guys carry on the vision. I think that is, I don't know, I think it's something you can be very proud of. It's really rewarding to be able to say that you can do that, to be able to give back and empower the people that have been step by step with you in the trenches. So certainly consider it and do research on what it is in the history of worker ownership and how it has really, really makes a company run like a well-oiled machine. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brandon. We really appreciate you being a part of the program and the fund and the network now. So thank you so much for sharing your experience. And just for folks who are here with us today, so you've kind of heard the two typical types of businesses that work with the fund. So you have folks that are, founders and kind of small groups of owners like Brandon who are saying, hey, I want to really broaden ownership. I want to stay with my company. I want to continue forward, but I want to bring more people in and maybe, spread out the responsibility a little bit, right? And also share hopefully the wealth that we're building together. And then you also have owners who are saying, you know what, it is at that time for me to kind of move to that next phase of my life. And I want to preserve my legacy and, be able to move forward and keep it in the hands of folks who can really, keep like, I love the way Brandon said it, the essence of this business, the essence of the why of what they're doing. So thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it back over to Chris now. I'm going to share my screen again just to talk about kind of, again, what types of businesses are we looking for and kind of what does this process look like in general? So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right, Paul. These next two slides are going to really be direct to your question. Paul asked in the chat, could you say more, and I'm paraphrasing, about the types of businesses you are targeting? That was Q1, question one. So what I will tell you, above and beyond what you see on the slide, we are looking at businesses that are producing reliable and consistent revenues. We are looking for businesses that are healthy businesses. And when we say healthy, we talk in terms of culture. When I say healthy, I do not mean perfect. There is no quote unquote perfect business, but we do want to have a base where there is some trust between the ownership and the workers in that particular business. We do want a business that is healthy in terms of margins, that is turned in terms of its growth trajectory, in terms of its reliability. Next slide. So what does all that qualitatively mean? Paul, that means that when we think about the ideal size of a company in terms of where we will start, we're typically looking at companies that have at least $1 million in sales revenue. We feel that $250,000 to $300,000 what we consider free cash flow would be sufficient because you want to have something meaningful to be able to share with the workers to kind of really accentuate what the new relationship looks like in terms of their relationship to the business. And because of our goal of really touching as many lives as possible, we typically want to touch firms that have at least 10 employees. Now, I'm transparent. I will tell you that these rules are guidance. They're not hard rules. But this is what we use as kind of our initial filter, if you will, on what an opportunity may look like for us. We are also looking at some of the key industries within our region. Our region is nationally known for healthcare, manufacturing, food services, and other industrial services. So those are pretty much the breadbasket of our region and where we look. What I will tell you is within those industries, we are absolutely looking at the future of those industries. So when we say manufacturing, it's not just what you may remember as manufacturing, but it's also what will manufacturing look like. So we think about what does having a supplier here in our region look like for Intel that's currently being built in Columbus, advanced robotics, advanced manufacturing. What does it look like for new healthcare startups or biotech companies that will be interested in this particular model? So I wanted to just share that to give perspective that when we say those industries, we mean that on a continuum because, in the words of a mentor, you always want to hunt where the ducks are. Meaning that we want to be positioned for the industries that are growing, that are healthy, profitable, consistent, reliable businesses. Thank you. A little bit about our process. So how does this start and how do we get to a place of finding and submitting a relationship with someone like Brandon? First, we start with exploratory conversations. We talk about really what is the problem for you? What is the circumstance? What is the situation? When we say you, we talk about specifically the business owner. We want to fully understand the history of what got a business owner to where they are. Oftentimes, in our experience, is an owner who has been in a business 30, 40 years. We actually had a relationship with a business owner who was 90 plus years old, and was now considering whether he should transition to his children or to his workers. But we want to put ourselves in their position and then kind of present ourselves, worthy as an alternative for a solution. So then once we have exploratory conversations, we then assess, does our model fit the needs of the business owner, and does it fit really what we would desire for the workers of that business? So we take a look at what does the cash flow of that business look like? What will be the incremental needs to keep the business either afloat, when I say afloat, in its current state, or to grow it? Would we have the appropriate level of interest from the workers to ensure that this model will work? Those are the types of things we discuss and we investigate in the feasibility phase. Then we get down and dirty and crafting the plan. When we say crafting the plan, this is where the discussion gets into what does the business plan look like? What do the bylaws and the rules and regs of how we're going to conduct ourselves as a new worker cooperative or an ESOP look like? What does it look like for the transition plan with the existing owner, whether that person is going to stay or transition at a later date? Then we get into the transactional details, where we talk about how much is the enterprise value, how will we structure the deal, how will we structure the capital stack, how much will be paid up front, how much will be paid over time, whether it be through a seller note or be through an earnout. And once we get there, we finalize the plan. For us, we finalize and then execute. And what I share with people is that although the process map looks like we're at the end, once we finalize the plan, that is truly where work for us begins. Because one of the things we openly acknowledge is that in many businesses, workers are used to thinking with an employee mindset. And now that we've created a different space, a different relationship, a different platform for them engaged in the work and have ownership in the work that they do on a daily basis, we see a critical part of what we bring to the table. You go to the next slide, being the technical assistance we provide. So when we say technical assistance, what are we talking about? We come in and we help with, as I mentioned before, a framework of helping workers understand their value and how their contribution makes a difference in the business. And we talked about using the great game of business. We stay with the business for the life of that business while it's within our network. We provide any key skills or any specified training through educational courses we have in-house within our organization or through partnerships, as you guys saw before. We also will provide the financing and funding. So when we're talking with a particular owner, we are helping facilitate the transaction that's able to make a contribution to the ownership on the behalf of the workers. And we're there, as I mentioned before, we talked about going through feasibility and crafting the plan. We are there to help with, as Brandon mentioned as an example, legally, how do you structure yourself from a governance perspective to truly meet the ideals of what it means to be worker-owned? What are some of the watch-outs? What are some of the best practices? We work closely with our organizations to develop the plan and the governance structure up front, but more importantly, we stay alongside the organizations through the life of their time with us in our network. So, of course, you will see it again, but please, 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 please help us get the word out. Currently, applications are open today. We have a standing deadline is November 15th. You see the web address below to either share or learn more about us. We will once again go through a review of what we discussed today to make sure we hit the hard points, but definitely want to close with that. And I'll pass it back to you, Ellen.
Okay, so just to remind us all what you guys have seen today and how you guys can all help us move this forward. So for interested businesses, or for those of you who know potential businesses that might be interested, please invite them to go to our website, businesslegacyfund.org or coopcincy.org. You'll be able to find it either way. For this kind of cohort that's coming in for 2023, applications are due by November 15th. And we're happy to have, a one-on-one with anybody who's interested or have questions. And we will also be holding another info session on October 27th at 11 a.m. And we'll send that out to folks so people know you can invite any business owners or folks who are considering this. And the program itself will start January 2023, when we'll really start digging in with that cohort that's selected. If you are, our colleagues and supporters, please spread the word. We will send you, following this, an email that you can forward to your network, and just, really making sure that, what we find so much as we talk to business owners, as most people have no idea that this is an option. And if they do, they only maybe think of an ESOP, which, as you all know, we do democratic ESOPs, but for many of them, if they're a little bit smaller, especially if they're under about 5 million in sales, oftentimes, an ESOP really doesn't work for them because of the cost. And there is another way, which is a worker co-op. So we want to make sure people know that this is an option if they care about the folks that help them build this business, that you guys are, making sure that they know that this option's out there. And we've got folks right here on the ground who can help them kind of navigate that. And then also, if anybody's interested in investing in the fund itself, we're constantly looking for, ways to catalyze more deals. So please reach out if that's something that you're interested in. And then for any media partners who are with us today, again, just helping us spread the word. We can send you kind of a little media packet after this with our press release and whatnot. And then we're also available for interviews. We'd be happy to get any stories out there, any op-eds, all those types of things. So thank you guys so much. And now it's time for Q&A. So what questions people have? We've gone through a lot of information. We've got a lot of great folks here today who've been a part of this, including Brandon. So do folks have any questions for any of us? I'm going to stop sharing here so we can all see each other.
And as individuals are pondering questions, I'm going to go ahead and make sure we answer Paul's questions. So Paul, earlier in the presentation, asked a question around the business profile. So hopefully we answered that one. Like I said, we're looking for healthy businesses, at least $1 million in sales, at least 250 for cash flow, and we're seeking to touch as many families as we can. When reached out to the community, how do you spread the word? What is your target message for your demographic? Our message has been, initially we learn. So many of our partners have in our space, in our philanthropic community, completely gravitate towards the end user or the impact of this model in terms of better community, better worker health, better worker relationships, and in relations to wealth equality, et cetera, et cetera. But as we talk to business owners, all those things may be great things to be in mind, but oftentimes is, how does this solution help me solve a problem or an issue I have with succession? And so we have refocused our message to be, as we go to the business community, more targeted to speak from that perspective, all of which are true, but to speak from that perspective to see if we can warrant another conversation. Have you found that, I'm assuming, ESOPs or co-ops are better? What I will share with you, and I'll allow for Chris, go ahead.
I don't think he's talking about ESOPs. I think he's talking about employee-owned trusts.
Oh,
and
trust.
what I would just simply say to that, so I'm Kristen, also with Co-op and so far our experience, and we are continuing to look into it more and more deeply to understand employee-owned trusts. But we really do like the co-op model compared to that, because there's all of these protections kind of baked in that support democratic control and support the values that the beautiful co-op values. In the state of Ohio, we happen to have a corporate co-op entity that is really flexible and allows us to meet many needs. We also, of course, can tap into other structures such as LLCs and corporations, as long as we make the operating agreement or the bylaws work. So we haven't really seen an advantage yet to go to the employee ownership trust, which is much less expensive, right, than the ESOP, because it's not regulated by ERISA and so forth. Also doesn't have some of those protections that are in there. We sort of see that right now the co-op has some protections and is less flexible and allows us to meet those needs. So far, we haven't quite seen a need for that, but we're still very open-minded and exploring all possibilities.
Anyone else? Feel free to come off mute with a question.
I'll go ahead and ask one. There's two SBDC advisors here on the call today. I was just wondering, are you guys okay? I know you offer some advising services to those who participate in the program. Are you okay with working in conjunction with the SBDC with clients to help them succeed?
For sure, for sure.
Right.
We love to partner. We want to wrap these businesses with as much technical assistance and support as possible. And obviously SBDC has huge amounts of expertise in so many areas. So yeah, we're excited to work with partners such as SBDC.
Excellent. Thank you.
I have a further question. I've been trying to nail down the actual transformation cost. And I know in ESOT, I know what that is. I know what the criteria are. And then you got employer ownership trust or co-op, which is dependent on the state because not all states have good co-op provisions. So I've been trying to figure out what it costs to form a co-op or an EOT. And I know that's going to be somewhat state variable, but we'd like to know some formulation costs for the different business forms as a guide.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is hard to give you anything exact because it really depends on the size of the business and the complexity of the deal. But where, there's not as much legal complexity, right, with forming a co-op. I will say, I don't know all the complexities around forming a trust, but I know it is less than forming an ESOP. But essentially, you're going to have the legal work to like form those new bylaws. The great thing, and the articles of incorporation, the great thing with working with, a co-op developer like Co-op Cincy is we have templates for that. So we try to do as much as we can to keep that cost down and keep those legal bills down as much as possible. And then there's, the time that's needed to do due diligence. So, if we have to contract an outside third party to do kind of evaluation, that would be more expensive than if we can do something in-house. So we first, do something in-house, and if that works for everybody, if the deal's not too large, we can keep those costs down pretty well, which I know is not an exact number, which is what you would love to have. But, it really is just based off of we can typically get a deal done within 3 to 4 months. And it's just, trying to make sure that there's just not too much time going into that. But it is, I would say if you're talking about, with ESOPs anywhere from, typically $50,000 to $50,000 or more, you're going to have co-ops that are, typically less than $20,000 to get formed.
That's a great number.
usually
And I think ESOPs are a lot more than that. I think if you spend 50 on an ESOP, you really got a bargain.
Yeah, depending on the size. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Tom, I saw a hand. I don't know if that was a hand to ask a question or just kind of.
Yes, no, I'm just one. I'm a little curious about how do you assess the culture within a company for its ability to manage the whole idea of this kind of transfer of ownership from what you might call the original command and control idea to a cooperative way of management.
Right. No, that's a great question and so important as we just do our feasibility. So it's a combination. Again, part of it will depend on how large the firm is and just how many people, right, we're dealing with. But we spend a lot of time. So once the owner has made the decision that they want to move forward on this, and they've accepted an LOI and we're ready, we've kind of got a ballpark of the price. Then a committee gets formed of the workers who, at least the initial group of workers that they're thinking they probably want to buy in. And we start to work through and really start to build out a plan and start to kind of assess, understanding what has the role of the owner been, what have they done, who's going to take on those roles, and also how are we going to truly build that culture. And then I think another kind of test to see what is that culture work currently is how many folks actually want to become owners, right? How many folks feel ready for that? If we get to kind of a larger entity, we have done kind of a cultural analysis where we actually kind of go through and we have to work with a consultant, but to have them actually kind of, help us kind of do some surveys and things to assess where, how people are feeling in the business, how are the systems and processes. So it just kind of depends on the size. But we do take it very seriously of do we believe, does it, based off of all the experience that we've had, based off of the conversations and interactions, do we feel like the culture is healthy enough that this could truly be, transition to worker ownership? That's a great question. You want to add anything to that, Chris?
The only thing I was going to add to just echo and also go deeper on a specific example. One of the simple things that you can do is with many of the firms, there are established values, right? You see it, mission statements, vision statements, and it is always interesting to say to have the ownership rank what's most important over the values, and then through a survey have the workers rank in terms of their experience what is most valuable. If there seems to be a huge gap in what ownership sees as values or what adherence to those values is like in the worker see, that is cause for a deeper dive, greater analysis. That's something very simple that you can do. But as Ellen shared, depending on the size will dictate how we approach getting a sense of the culture. But we have had engagements where we brought in third parties to help us get our arms around a larger transaction in terms of what does the health look like in terms of being a good fit for work ownership.
I've got another question. I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but what is the structure of your fund? Is it coming in tranches, or is this going to be a revolving operation, or good? Because it's kind of rare to get funding for ownership, employee ownership.
Yeah, so our typical structure is that the fund will fund anywhere between 40 to 60% of the purchase price of the deal. And then that other, 60 to 40% will be either a loan, a seller note, or an earnout, and would get paid out over time at kind of from the profits of the business. So that's the typical way that we structure the deals through the fund. Now, sometimes we bring in other partners that might bring a little more upfront. It just kind of depends, but those are the typical ways. And then the other thing I would say that's very different from maybe something like an SBDC loan is that the loan is going directly to the business. And so it doesn't depend on any one individual's like personal credit or net worth. It's really based on the performance of the business, the historical performance. And then the other thing I think that's really pretty amazing and why we call non-extractive for our fund is that obviously we're trying to work with businesses that are very stable, but we know that all businesses go through ups and downs, and the fund that comes out of the National Financial Cooperative Seed Commons, that portion of it is dependent on the health of the business. So they only pay from their net profits. So if they have a slow month or a slow 6 months or a slow year, they are not having to pay on that loan until they're back in a stable place.
Do you have geographic restrictions on where you loan?
We do. So for Co-op Cincy, we're in kind of the Southwest Ohio kind of region. However, there are Seed Commons loan funds all across the country. So, depending on where you're at, if that's something that you're interested in, we'd be happy to try and make some introductions.
Yeah, how do I get a list of those people for the Northwest? That's my big question. Thank you.
I'll send you a list. Paul,
Thank you.
can you put your email in there in the chat and I'll send it to you?
I sure can.
Yeah. Well, any more questions before we wrap up today? We appreciate all the ones we've had so far. So, yeah. Okay. Well, then to respect everybody's time, we are just, so excited you guys are all with us today on our 3rd year launch. We're hoping to get some really big ones over the hill this time. So please get the word out, help us spread, the word and awareness around the program, and please have them get their applications in before November 15th. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you.